Welcome to the Healthy Home Show. I'm your host, Fernanda Furman, Healthy Home Architect.
Hi, I'm Eric Furman, Healthy Home Contractor.
And today we're here with Jay Watts. And we have been getting a lot of questions on paint and safer sealers and caulking. So today Jay is going to talk to us and give us a better understanding on those products and the safest side of it. Thank you so much for being here today, Jay.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on the show today. I think probably just to get started and explain to your listeners my background, I've been with AFM for about 25 years now. And I got started before that. I actually had my own design company. My wife and I ran a marketing and advertising design company, and we were approached by the owners of AFM, the new owners of AFM, to come in and help them with their packaging and their messaging and their storytelling. And so we took that project on. And then as time went on, the relationship kind of changed, and it became clear to me that there was something really exciting going on with AFM. The people they were working with, the people they were actually helping, really kind of resonated with me. And so we were able to structure a deal where I was able to maintain some of my advertising clients through the transition. And I did that and then came on full time after about a year of transition. And it's been a pretty exciting ride all along, you know, with the evolution of green building and green product development, starting back in, this is 1993, 94. It was still in kind of a nascent industry. There wasn't a lot of awareness. There were a few companies, our company and a couple other ones, and they were working on this fringe, quote unquote, of the building world. And it allowed us to kind of be the number one company in the field. That's changed, of course, in a good way. There's a lot more companies now that are offering green building products and those strategies, and so I'm happy about that. To get back to the original founding of the company, this was back in the early 80s. The original founder was a fellow working out of Riverside. His plant was in Riverside, and he was building, making building products, coatings, primarily as a toll manufacturer for anyone who wanted to come in and have a product made for him. And so it was dominated by alkyd or oil-based technologies. Mm-hmm. Back then, water-based was still kind of a new idea, and it was slowly but surely coming into the market, but it wasn't the number one thing. People were still using oil-based. What happened as a part of him working in that industry, he and his employees started to develop these symptoms of exposure, and because of that, it caused kind of a problem with his workforce. He had people calling in sick repeatedly, and it became a concern. And then what tipped it over for him is he actually got chemically sensitive with his exposures day in and day out with the products he was using. There is a clinic in Dallas, Texas called the American Health Clinic. And they actually, and they've been around for many decades now, the lead physician there, Dr. William Ray, and sadly he passed on last year, but the clinic in Dallas is set up to treat people that have the symptoms of chemical sensitivity. And of course, as you know, you can become chemically sensitive in a variety of different ways through a massive exposure, or what's more common is occupational exposure, where at a low level you're exposed over a longer period of time, and your immune system can only handle so much of that. And in Andy Pace's interview, he mentioned the idea of a barrel or a bucket, and how our immune system can tolerate a lot, but if we keep filling up the bucket, eventually it tips over, and then we suffer from the symptoms of chemical sensitivity. So what the founder of AFM had to do is he had to figure out what was wrong with him, because of course back then there was not a field of environmental medicine. There is now, thankfully. So he went to Dallas, and he was interviewed by Dr. Ray and his staff, and they determined, obviously you're in a field where you're poisoning yourself, and you need to stop doing that. Mm-hmm. So he came back, and while he was there, he was able to meet other patients who had come to the clinic to detox, and he heard their stories, and there was a lot of stories that he heard that suggested that they had been exposed in some way to the same stuff that he was exposed to. So with that revelation, he came back to Riverside, California is where the plant was. And he said, everybody, we got to start formulating a different way. And so one product at a time, he started taking things apart. This is one of the nice things about the AFM story. And that is that we're then one of the only companies that kind of focused really on the health side of the equation. We obviously were concerned about efficacy, that the products have to work. And we also have to, keep in mind the economies. That kind of was the dominant, and kind of still is the dominant mentality about these building products. They got to work really well, and they got to hold up a long time, and they got to be fairly cheap. And so we were kind of battling against that. But the number one priority was, can we make a formula that's safe for someone who's struggling with sensitivity challenges? And so, you've heard the saying, the canary in the coal mine. Our chemically sensitive canaries in the coal mine were able to tell us, as we presented formulas to them, whether or not these formulas were working for them. So it took a lot of trial and error. We had to give them something and say, how do you do with this? And they were like, well, I'm not doing so well with that. We bring it back to the lab and reformulate it and then present it again. And so there was a period of time there where we were going back and forth to try to figure out what it was. Once we had a basic understanding of the chemicals that we could tolerate, and everyone can tolerate, especially the chemically sensitive, we were able to start to build the brand up and build the line up. What happened is, as the word got out that we were making safer products, we would get feedback from clients saying, well, I've got this product, your seal or Safe Seal, that was our first sealer, Safe Seal, and then can you make a paint? Could you make a coating for wooden floors? Can you do something for furniture? So slowly but surely, we were able to branch out the brand by hearing that feedback and tinkering with the basic formulations and the basic chemistry, and allowing some of that same chemistry, just with slight modifications, to be able to help us make a whole variety of coatings. So Eric, to answer your question, yeah, it's much beyond paints and just paint. So that's kind of the quick story on the history of the company.
Got it. So you brought up a couple things I want to touch on. One of them was, and we talked about this before we got into the interview, and what we're going to be talking about today, about spouses, partners, family members, friends, where one person is being affected, can't figure out what's going on, and the other one not understanding or empathizing with them, thinking they're just imagining it. That's a big point. So you had mentioned there is a place now, even going back quite a ways, a lot of people are not aware, nor we were really aware, that there's actually a medical facility that you can go that's testing for environmental toxins right now. Is that
exactly right?
That's with Dr. Stephanie McCarter, right?
I don't know if it's hers, but maybe there's others too that we didn't know about.
Yeah, there probably is. And it's like a whole field now, environmental medicine. So there are doctors that are actually being able to counsel their patients on the problem, as opposed to, as Fernanda might have alluded to before we went on air, a lot of the, especially within a family and also outside of the family with physicians, there was a sense that this was not a physical problem as much as a mental problem.
Yeah.
You were imagining these things, and of course then sadly some of the prescriptions were go see your psychiatrist, or on the other side, not really knowing how to treat it and then prescribing medications that were absolutely useless.
Right.
I try to, I don't want to discount the idea that, we're holistic here. It's mind, body. So of course there's going to be a mental component. Absolutely, there's a physical component to it. You can't, in my mind, you can't really separate those things, and you should not.
Yeah, especially after you go through what we see a lot, it's like there's that component of fear. Like, what if I become exposed to this again and I feel like that again? So that fear lingers in your mind. And even if, another product's not making you sick, you kind of almost feels like is the fear of making you sick could make you sick.
Yeah, no, absolutely true. And the other thing too is that you have the fear of upsetting a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important to you with your spouse, your family, and so that fear plays into it too. Of course, all of these things are stimulants for the sensitivity, right? It's like if you start to be fearful, then that kind of adds to the load. That's a part of that load in the immune system. So yeah, it's it's a tough call because thankfully what's happening, there's so much education going on. Your show's educating, and there's so much on the internet now, both good and bad. I think there's a lot of good on the internet. I think there's a lot of fear that can develop from people reading too much on the internet.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of kind of, how do I say it, very kind of narrow analysis, which it sometimes can be very good, sometimes can throw people off a little bit because they go down a rabbit hole, and it's like down here, and it's like, wait a minute, you got to back out a little bit, take a broader view of this to understand it on a deeper level. Otherwise, it can get you all kind of crazy because you think, oh man, that's really bad. And you have to be careful. And again, because your show is so broad-based, I think that's going to be helpful to people who are watching and listening. They'll get a sense that, there's a lot to know.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the idea. It's a challenge, and I always when I'm talking, I do a lot of my day is talking to people about their projects, because they'll come to me with, I'm needing to do this. A lot of times we're in a remedial mindset where people have made a decision, and the decision they thought was a smart one, but then it turns out it wasn't so good, and they're having an indoor air pollution problem, right? And so now it's corrective time, and what do I do to correct? And I always feel kind of sad for my clients that I talk to, because I wish I could have talked to them before they made some of the decisions they made. And, of course, that's not always the case. But anyway, we try to do our best to kind of help them go through it. And of course, as you mentioned, Eric, it's that there's that feedback on the other side saying, come on, get over it. It's okay. Just let it be, and it will be fine.
Yeah.
And I think therein lies, and I know we're going to talk about this, maybe this is the time to do it. There is, and Eric, you being a contractor, you can understand this. There's this idea that, and I understand, people hire contractors, because they want a professional to do the work, someone who's experienced. And of course, when you hire a contractor, the contractor comes to you with all of their ideas, their skills, and most importantly, they come with their toolkit of products. And it's difficult for a contractor who is not open to the ideas to want to make substitutions for all the reasons I understand completely. One, they've been using a certain brand of product or products for a long, long time. They know exactly how to apply them. They know exactly what they're going to do over a long haul. They're confident, and Eric, I know you'll love this, they're confident that I won't have to come back to the job site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they come into the conversation with someone who's saying, well, wait a minute, I need to make substitutions here. And what I try to tell my clients is, if they're in that position where they're starting to make their decisions about this, they have to do all their homework way ahead of the contractor. All right? Yeah. They need to get their products all figured out. And then once they've got that, and not only do they figure them out, but how am I going to get them to where I need to get them, when I need to get them? Because, of course, contractors don't want to come to a job site and the products aren't there. The other thing too about the boutique brands like us, of course, we're not in every Home Depot or Lowe's around the country. So in many cases, if there's not a dealer close by, this stuff has to all be trucked in. And that means there's time involved. And there's also the potential of something happening in transit where the product's supposed to be at the job site, but the truck lost it, or the product got damaged in shipment. Doesn't happen very often, but it does. Yeah. So it's really good to get way ahead on the time schedule. And then the other thing I say is, if you can, try to vet your contractor as much as possible. Even have a list of the priorities in your project. And of course, at the top of that priority list is your own personal health, and your indoor air quality is number one. So you're going to then go to a contractor and say, well, here's our priorities. Here's the substitutions. We want to introduce you to these well in advance, and then try to set it up so that we can schedule our project knowing that we're going to need the products at the location well before you arrive. Also, it's not a bad idea, if the contractor is really open to this, to get them samples so they can actually experiment a little bit, so they're not really, experimenting on your job and charging you more. That's the other component here too about the contractor knowing his product line. They know how to price, bid the job, because they know the hours it's going to take. When you add a new product, then there's that question, how much time is it going to take me to learn to do that? Yeah. And I've said it over and over again. there's nothing really exotic about our line. And many of the other eco lines that are out there, there's not a big, long learning curve here. I mean, if you can read, I hate to say it, but if you can read both on the website and on the labeling, then you're probably going to be okay. It's not rocket science. So if you're using my Safecoat paint, for example, it's just like water-based. It's water-based. So the same processes, you know, the same tools and techniques, the same water-based, you know, of environmental, you know, concerns, dry time and application, and all of that comes into play. But it's not hard. It's not hard.
So I love what you said about vetting the contractors, because dealing with contractors on the job site, one of the things that, you know, the challenges that we had, it's every contract and the jobs that we were dealing with. And I tried to talk to them about, you know, are you guys interested in learning more about non-toxic buildings? You know, a different way of building that uses different materials. And they're like, you know what, we have been building like this for hundreds of years. This is just fine. So I think getting that level of training, you know, maybe training them or having something that they can feel confident that they can do that job and not feel scared of doing it. And as you say, and being called 20 times to solve a problem, that level of confidence, I think, is what they need. But also, if we as a consumer, and I've seen so many times people just going like, I don't care what the floor is going to be because my contractor already got a big deal on this floor and that was on sale. This is going to save us so much money and he's confident about this. I don't want to lose this contractor, because they trust. It's hard to find a contractor that will take the job from the beginning to the end. So I think that is one of the challenges that we see in the, like on my side, like being on the job site as an architect, like helping the clients. It's, as you said, you plan ahead. You as a consumer, if you're remodeling your home or if you're building a new home or just simply painting the home, it's knowing what's important to you. Because if you don't know what's priority, then it's the client, the contractor will make the priorities for you, right? Or the architect.
That's exactly right. I think the other thing that I try to stress is sampling. You know, we have a sample program on our website where you can actually get little samples, because we want to make sure that what the new thing we're bringing in is something we're going to be okay with. You can read a lot and you can see that, you know, companies messaging about their product line, but knowing the chemically sensitive as intimately as we do, we realize that everyone's different. Mm-hmm. And so you have to, in my mind, the safest route is to get samples well in advance and you do your own testing. Now, there's a variety of test modalities. There's muscle testing. If you go to a physician who's got a protocol for your testing different exposures, and they'll tell you what you should do. But what you need to do, and the simple tests that I do, I have sensitivities to carpeting. That's one of the things that really I can't tolerate. I can be around carpeting for about 2 minutes, and then I have a problem. My throat actually constricts. I can't swallow.
Including area rugs?
Not so much though, wall to wall mainly. Area rugs I'm pretty good with. And our home here is all hardwood floors. So, and you know, there are hierarchies of safer products. Andy might have delved into that when he has his interview. And certainly I deal with that on a daily basis. But one thing, friend, and I wanted to relate to when you were talking about contractors is they come with a very strong approach and attitude. You know, I'm the pro. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. I've been doing it for a long time. This will all be okay. Mm-hmm. Therein is the dangerous word, okay. Because what's okay for the contractor isn't necessarily okay for you. Yeah. And so when they say, hey, don't worry about that floor finish, it's going to off gas in a few days, you'll be fine. No. That's not true. Maybe true. You may think it's true. Maybe okay for you. You're different than I am. But for me, no. And so I know that that's not going to work. Even though you know it, you say it's going to work, I can't. Mm-hmm. So that's hard though, because then the contractor says, well, goodbye. Sorry, I can't do that. I won't do that. I can't. The term I really have a hard time with is when a contractor says, I can't guarantee my work. Mm-hmm. I thought, really? aren't you a professional? I mean, aren't you able, don't you know the lay of the land here when it comes to building materials? If you're not aware of what's going on in the building trades right now, maybe you've had your head in the sand too long. I don't want to, criticize too harshly here, because there's a lot of great contractors out there who are buying into the idea, and they're actually changing their practices. I have contractors who will work with a client and they're come in skeptical. And then after the project, they go, wow, that was great. And guess what? You know what? I'm going to add this to what I can offer my clients. When I talk to a contractor, I say, listen, I don't expect you to just drop everything you've ever done and just go to this side. No, I want you to think about adding this to your toolkit. And it becomes another thing you can offer your clients. When someone comes to you and says, hey, I'm chemically sensitive, I want to build a green, safe home, you go, I'm on board. I've done that before, and I like the idea. So let's get busy. I think that is I'm hoping that that's kind of where we're evolving to. I know it's true, because guess what? Eric, I don't know how old you are, but you're a younger generation contractor. The old guys who are dying the wool, that's only done it one way, that there's a new generation of builders coming in, and that new generation is much more aware of these things. So I think in the long haul, it's going to be a lot easier for consumers and people with challenges to be able to find people that are going to be able to walk into a project and go, I know what I'm doing, and this is going to be awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I come from a long line of contractors. In fact, I kicked and screamed my way into this whole world. Father, grandfathers, I mean, everybody in my family is one type of contractor or another. And
right.
Yeah, I see that a little bit, especially they're East Coast, most of them. So, there's this new generation. But the one thing I want to touch on too, and you're probably seeing this too, and it's been brought up here, is as we move forward with these new ideas and this whole supply and demand chain gets figured out, is to also avoid more problems by this whole greenwashing and these things that you think you're doing the right thing. For example, this huge energy movement here and how that's basically made us sick. Focusing on things and really seeing things all the way through to the end. And you guys have mentioned, you guys do testing on people, and there's so many elements to this. That's why you said we've expanded the show to like this huge circle of influence. It's not just one thing. It's not just one method. And yes, one of the biggest takeaways, as you've mentioned already, is it's absolutely the responsibility of us, the consumer, who are starting these projects. We've got this idea, I want to renovate, I want to remodel, I want to build a new home. So that's your responsibility to educate yourself and then find people that'll do it. And then also realize right now where we're at, you might pay a little bit more for the contractor to experiment, so to speak, with something he's never done before, because then there's the business element of it.
Right.
So we get to that level where it's more mainstream, it might cost a little bit more right now.
Yeah.
Less in the long run, right?
Correct.
In the long term, it's going to maybe cost more up front.
Yes, great point.
But less, because to us, it costs a lot, to me, to get up at 9 o'clock in the morning, don't have energy, fatigue, having to go to doctors and buying all the vitamins and not being able to be who I was. That cost me a lot.
Or rip out everything that you did that ended up making you sick and then redoing it. Like you said, you've got a sensitivity to carpet. Let's say you put it all down and go, oh my gosh. And we've seen this. And we've almost done similar things in our own home. Like, oh my gosh, we got to rip out all of this stuff. And
yeah, sadly, it happens more than it should.
Yeah.
And I give people credit for, they're making their best efforts from what they know in their education on these things. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to know. And like we've talked earlier, there's a lot of information to digest. So it takes time. I think, and that's the crucial thing, is allowing for the time.
Yeah.
That's the deal with the contractor. And if you find a good contractor, man, that woman, I was thinking about this morning when I was showering. Of course, I get great ideas in the shower. We have a fraternity of contractors. We always have. We need a sorority. We need a sorority of contractors.
Yeah, that's coming.
Yeah, I hope so. There's a lot of great women out there that are doing some really good work.
Yeah. Maybe that's what it's going to take. They're definitely more sensitive to these issues, and our big customer base, it seems like the driving force is the woman or the mom. They definitely have a much more caring spirit, I've noticed. So yeah, that's
yeah, it's absolutely true. And I would say, just to follow up that up, I'd say 90% of my conversations are with women.
Yeah.
Because men, Sorry, Rachel, we're kind of like, don't ask me directions. I know where I'm going. That
Yeah.
kind of mentality. It's the same thing, right? The guy, he doesn't, don't do that. And so I'm not going to call. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't feel this. You're sick. I'm not. It's okay.
Yeah.
If you do what you need to do. And then so the woman then calls in and we have a nice conversation. I do love it when I can get both husband and wife on the phone together, because I can kind of address the skepticism a little bit. I think what's really been helpful for me is be able to admit, I've got some sensitivities myself, and that's really for me been really important, because as Fernanda, you alluded to, someone with chemical sensitivity is very fearful about someone not hearing them, not understanding them. And you're not going to get that I have a real problem here. And you need to listen to me so I can say to someone, I hear you because I am too myself challenged. And that just opens the door to the conversation so quickly. And boy, I want to cut to the chase as quickly as I can, because one of the things that happens is because of the fear, there's this sense that the client needs to explain everything about their sensitivity. Oh, this is what happened to me 20 years ago, and it goes on and on. The conversations can be very long. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to say, I don't need to know that. I understand it so personally that we can jump right to the issue.
Yeah.
So one of the things I want to, because you just mentioned something that's really important, it's like there's so many balls in the air when we're doing a project, right? And of course, what got the most focus years ago and still kind of dominates is energy efficiency. How do we maintain that? How do we get the best energy efficiency, and on and on? When I'm talking about the indoor air quality idea, I like to think about the indoor as your body. Like, so the walls, ceilings, floors, all those are your skin, right? It's our biggest organ of our body is the skin. So what we want to do in our home is we want to treat the skin as well as we can. So in a project, you've got all these layers of expenses and things that need to get done. And to me, what you don't want to do in the end of the day is discover that somehow your budget got all eaten up by all these other things. And then the skin, we're having to compromise with the skin. And I say, we don't want that. You want the safest thing that you can put your finger on. Sometimes I say the thing you can put your tongue on to make the point. You want that to be the safest thing you're doing. So if you have to make some compromises down in the pile someplace, let's talk about what we think those are. Can we use a conventional product, knowing that there's going to be ways that we'll be able to manage that based upon structural ideas? Here's a good example. A lot of times people want to seal their subfloor, plywood subfloor, because it's got formaldehyde in it. And I say, yeah, okay, that's a good idea. I don't mind that. I think that's a bad idea. However, what else are we doing? How much more of this project? Are we just doing the floor, or are we doing a whole bunch of other stuff? Which means we're going to be spending a bunch of money. Okay, so I come back to it and I say, well, what are we doing over the subfloor? Are we doing hardwood? Are we putting down tile? Are we doing vinyl, marmoleum, forbo? Are we doing carpeting? And then I can kind of tell them, well, here's a way to think about it. Do we need to seal that? Because you're putting a sealer with your material on top of that plywood or that particle board. So in essence, you've got a barrier. So maybe we can take that off the list of things we need to spend money on. Why? Because we're going to want to spend that money down the road. We want to make sure that when we get to the end of the trail, everything we're doing it's going to be the first thing that's going to happen when we walk in is all that stuff we can touch. That's where it's got to be done right.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think there's so many things that you have talked about, and we have been very blessed to have people on the show that they're all about the mission. And that's one of the things I want to express. We're not here to say this brand or that brand. We're here with companies that have a mission behind. And that's what it's important, because when you work there, you understand what it is to be exposed to certain toxins, and you are sensitive yourself, but you're sensitive to different things. People are different, have sensitivities to different things.
Absolutely.
So you understand, and you're not going to be that kind of person that's just going to sell things just for the money because you know how it is. So your mission matters a lot, which creates trust. And
absolutely. I sometimes people are kind of amazed because if we don't have something in my line, I will refer them to other companies. I do it all the time. All the time. I'm not there. I am and I'm not. I mean, I'm there really to help people live in a healthy home and live healthy lives. That's number one priority. That's the mission of our company, basically. But if there's another brand out there that I think is going to do a better job, I'm all over that. I'll tell them.
Yeah.
The other thing, I'm a real massive tinkerer. I mean, I have projects all over the place. I got all kinds of weird things that I've done. I try to do things wrong. I try to break it, right? Absolutely didn't read the label, put it on exactly wrong at the wrong time, did everything wrong. Now what do I do? So it really helps me to be able to say, well, what happened? And they go, well, this and this. That's the hard thing about doing remedial, because you have to be a Sherlock Holmes. You have to do a real forensic investigation. You have to say, well, what was there before you got started? And then who came in and what did they do, and all the preparation and timing and application and all this stuff comes into play. So it's really you got to dig in there and figure out what happened before you can tell them what to do to fix it. So it's been challenging. Sometimes I get a little frustrated because I hear bad barking back and forth about complaining. But at the end of the day, we usually figure it out, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. One of the big products that you guys have and a lot of your experience is paint in homes. Is that correct? Like walls, ceilings, these types of things?
Yeah, because it's a thing that's done most often, right?
Yeah.
You're in the rental world, landlords are constantly repainting their apartments or their complexes when new tenants come in. So yeah, paint is usually the dominant product in most of the brands. So one of the things that we discovered when we were working with the chemically sensitive is that was alluding to earlier, is we were able to get that database of ingredients. And so we appropriated that into our paint line, the Safecoat Zero VOC paint line. I think what's interesting, and it's been discussed on the show before, is the whole idea of VOCs and what it means. And so for many, many years, and this kind of shocks people, we had no Zero VOC products in our line. Everything was low VOC. And still, if you look at my MSDS or SDS sheets, you'll see that I got low VOC in all my products. And the question is, well, wait a minute. How do you get away with that? I thought zero was the benchmark, right? And my answer is, well, not necessarily. There are exempt ingredients that can show up in zero VOC products, and they're harmful to you, but they're not regulated, so they don't have to talk about them. And so when someone comes to me and says, oh, I used a zero VOC brand and I'm suffering, what's the story? And I say, well, you're exposed to those exempt ingredients. There's a category called hazardous air pollutants, HAPs. You'll probably see that a little more often now as people start to get more aware of that. And so the hazardous air pollutants, there's a big long list of those, and there's like over 300 VOC ingredients. The hazardous air pollutants, some of those hazardous air pollutants aren't showing up on the VOC regulation. So you can be exposed to a hazardous air pollutant, and it's a zero VOC product. So
can you talk a little bit about the products? Let's say somebody's just buying a paint of cane that's no VOC or zero VOC. What are the main ingredients they should be looking at when they're buying those, so they can be aware of what they do to their bodies and what they are?
And maybe also walk us through the steps of looking for it, putting it on, and then how long does it need to sit? Let's say they bought the zero VOC or the safest paint right now. Like, what does that look like? Because it's been brought up, like you said on the shows, okay, even though you're getting zero or low, now they've replaced it with things they don't have to mention, and now it's releasing over a slower period of time versus all at once. So yeah, what's the whole safe process that you guys recommend to people?
Yeah, there's so you'll see on the SDS sheets, they'll list the ingredients, based upon the amount of that ingredient in the product. And then what they don't have to mention is anything under 1% of the formulation. And so there's where some of the chemistry shows up that may be problematic, even though it's a small amount. If you've got a whole lot of 1%ers, it starts to kind of add up as a cumulative effect. Amines, which are related to ammonia, a solvent, right? And amines can show up in formulations. So if you see an amino or an amine in there, that may be connected to an ammonia, and ammonia is a non-regulated ingredient. Acetone's another solvent. You don't see acetone in coatings. You'll see glycols. Ethylene glycol is basically antifreeze. So the replacement for that, a safer version of that, is propylene glycol. Some of these ingredients are actually necessary for the polymerization of the coating, so it can actually dry properly and form a film properly. So paint basically is really two things. It's what's left behind is the resin, which is in our case a really high quality acrylic resin. We figure those are the safest and the best. That's what our chemically sensitive clients told us anyway. So you have the acrylic resin and you have the pigment that's in there, and that's what's basically left behind. Yeah, there's two things that go on. I describe them kind of in two ways. There's the initial volatility. That's when everything's wet and it's off-gassing at a high level. And then as it starts to cure, that starts to decline. That's the physical reaction you'll have. You walk into a newly painted house and it smells really strongly. And then as it starts to cure, then that starts to decline. But as the curing goes on, the off-gassing continues, and it can continue for weeks and months. Those unreacted monomers that are still in the film that are off-gassing, they're still going on. It may be at a really low level. And for most people, they maybe don't perceive it. So when you're working with water-based products, the idea, of course, is we want an evaporative environment. That's going to help things move along the trail of curing and off-gassing. So what does that mean? Well, it means normal air temperatures, 68, 78 degrees is ideal. Humidity around 40 to 50% is ideal. It's really important to follow coverage recommendations. Film mill thickness on the films needs to be according to the coverage on a can. Everyone's got their coverage, 350, 450 square feet. So you want to make sure that you know how much is going on. So depending on what people are doing, an example would be, let's decide that your color palette is going to include a lot of saturated colors, a lot of dark colors. So in paint, the way bases in paint are constructed is you have in your lightest base, you have the most titanium dioxide. Now, when I say that, people go, wait a minute, titanium dioxide, oh my God, what is that? Well, it's basically the mineral that's used to give opacity and whiteness to paint. And so everybody in the conventional or water-based world uses titanium dioxide as the whitener or the thickener or the opacity builder. But as you get into the bases for the different tones, you start to eliminate that white. You start to take it out. Otherwise, you can never get a formula to match. So when you're taking out titanium dioxide, you're adding pigment. Well, in some colors, the pigment itself is really fairly translucent. So you can apply a coat of a dark red, for example, and that first coat goes on and it looks pretty thin. You almost can see through it. And you're going, wait a minute, why is that happening? Oh, there's something wrong. No, there's not the titanium dioxide to help balance that out. So you're going to be putting on multiple coats. The challenge there is to refrain from loading up a big thick coat to try to hide the background. So there's two things. People get this confused. They think coverage means hide. No, hide is what you're doing to the background. You're hiding the background. Coverage is how much a paint does in a gallon of square footage. So that's just a little nuance, and I like to share that because then the conversation is a little bit better. But so what happens is a contractor may come in and go, oh, I got to put it on more thickly, got to really load it up, get it on there, because I don't want to do 4 coats or 3 coats. I want to only do 2 and get out of here, right? So what happens is that thick coat then takes longer to dry. Coat 1 maybe isn't dry yet before, guess what? I went to lunch, 2 hours went by, it says on the can I can recoat in 2 hours. I come back and I put another thick coat on top of a first thick coat. Oh my God, this thing here is struggling to off-gas. Can't get out because why? Because if things dry from the top down. So this is taking a long time to get through. While this is fighting, well, guess what? That means all this stuff's going to take a lot longer. Let's throw in the idea that, hey, it's a little chilly today. Ooh, the humidity's way, way high. All of that acts as a retarder as well. So when we're in this situation where we have to deal with this, so the people call up and they go, oh my God, the paint's been on the wall for 2 weeks. I'm still smelling paint. Why am I smelling paint? And I say, well, let's get back and talk about what we did. How the painter had to buy more paint. We thought we figured it out. We got 10 gallons, but he needed 5 more. What happened? Well, I start to think, did he put it on too thick? Right? And he ran out when he shouldn't have run out. And then all those other things, around that come up. Oh my God, more money, more time. The guy's going to leave. He can't come back for 2 weeks. We're going to be living in a house where the walls aren't done yet, and we got to move furniture in, and it goes on and on. But anyway, just get back to your point about the paint. So that's kind of the basics about it. Again, to me, no matter what you read, you need to get products, especially if you're sensitive, you need to get samples. You just have to. There's no better proof than for you to do your own test. Here's what I do. I take whatever coating, and I have to buy conventional coating sometimes because I don't make it, and I can't get it from my other eco suppliers for whatever reason. So I have a piece of glass. And what I do is I put my coating on the glass, because I don't want the coating to sit on something else. So there's a process sometimes where coatings, water-based coatings or oil-based coatings, but mostly water. Water is a solvent. So we can activate benign things laying in a surface. It's called flushing. So you put a coating on something and the water activates chemistry that was probably, it's like the wet dog. Your dog goes to the beach, it smells like awful, bring him home, dries out, no problem. You get something flushing and all of a sudden you've got a new chemical reaction going on, right? So what we want to make sure here is that when we're dealing with this problem of too thick and too quick and too fast, we're going to have to change the environment. So we have to elevate the temperature. We have to dry the air. We have to have ventilation. Ventilation is really important. Some people think that ozoning is a good idea. I'm not a big fan of it. Some people think that bakeouts are a really good idea. I'm skeptical about bakeouts. They come in with heaters. They come in with heaters and they crank the heat up.
That's what I thought.
And just real quickly, I tell you a story. I got a call from a guy up in Orange County. He had just built $1 million home on the Palisades in Capistrano Beach, and he couldn't live there because once he got back in there, everything was off-gassing. And he was freaking out and no one knew what to do. And he calls, he looks around, he finds companies that are dealing in the world, and he calls me up and he says, I got a problem. Can you come to the job site? And I thought, yeah, okay. I'd like to see a $2 million house on the bluff. I used to live up there, so I have a fond, feeling in my heart for that area, the Orange County. So I went up and I got to the house and I was looking around and I went into the kitchen. I go, what the heck happened to your cabinets? All of the cabinet faces were split down the middle. The cabinet doors would not close. They wouldn't lock on their little latch. I went down the hall and his doors wouldn't close. They wouldn't, the latch, there was so much shrinkage that the doors wouldn't close. And we're talking cherry, Eric. All the cabinets were cherry.
Wow.
We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars of stuff. Ruined. This guy is out of his mind, right? They had done a bakeout. And actually, it was a consultant that I have talked to before that made the recommendation. And I think the end of the story was that he was an attorney and there was a whole lot of legality that went around there. But anyway, what he wanted me to do is he wanted me to see if I could help him fix his cabinets because the cabinets were off-gassing, whatever the finish was. And so I actually grabbed a drawer. I brought it back to San Diego. I totally treated it myself. I coated every single side of it. I let it cure for 2 weeks. I gave it back to him and it was much, much better. But he was so sensitive that even that didn't work for him. Even that didn't work. And I've lost track of this. Is 4 or 5 years ago, so I don't know how it resolved. I'm hoping for his sake that it resolved in a good way. I was saddened that I couldn't help him. I had real high hopes that maybe I could come in and make a difference, but it just didn't work out. No. So is there something else about the paint you want to talk to me about or with coatings in general?
Yes, sealers. Like one of the questions we had from the audience, it's about when they were doing the stairs, for example, we use a lot of stains. Are there safe stains?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely so. Yeah, we and the part of the nice thing about our brand and other brands too is we have a real broad line. So it's because what I said earlier, that clients came to us and go, hey, can you make that? And can you make this? And can you do that? And can you make all these different products? Because I like what you did there. And so we go, sure, of course. So yeah, we have an interior water-based stain we call Durotone. There's others out there. Many times we're trying to figure out, the combinations of things we're going to do. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I like the idea of staying in one mode. Let's stay with water-based where we can. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes we have to use an alkyd or oil-based product. Then we want to come in with a water-based product. And there's always that balancing act we have to do between the two ideas. Generally, alkyd or oil-based products take longer to cure.
Mm-hmm.
On the installer side, that's a nice thing because they're more user-friendly because they're slower to start to set up, especially with stain. I mean, most contractors do not want to use water-based stains on big projects like floors because they dry too quickly. And so you really have to understand it and have to know how to manage water-based on a large installation. Our new stain, DuraStain's a little bit better at that. We've gotten bigger coverage. It stays wetter, what's called a wet edge longer. But oil stains are really good because they blend really well into the wood. They stay wet a lot longer. You can rag on oil-based stains where you can't rag on water-based stains. You just don't get enough stain on the wood to keep it wet long enough. And so you get what's called lapping, and that's a big problem. So there's ways to work around it, but you have to balance it with timing, and it takes some, it takes time, and you have to, and that's where the challenge is because the contractor doesn't want to do that. I don't have the time for that. You know, I need to get this done and I need to move on. And so it becomes a challenge. So yeah, we have stain. So in that case, if you're doing stairs, water-based stain, water-based top coat, of course, we make one. We make a urethane replacement. We call polyuracil VP, and that can go over a water-based stain. It can go over other water-based stains. So you can go to Home Depot and buy Minwax's water-based stain, and you can apply that, and then you can put my coating over it. So the client says, well, it's a conventional water-based. I'm a little worried about it. And I say, well, one of the values of our brand is that we seal in other things. So you can use a conventional product, and then we can seal over it and protect you from whatever's off-gassing from that.
That's a really interesting thing you brought up right now is about sealing that in. Yeah, because as Andy brought up a lot of things too, now it's in the back of my head, like his story about the epoxy water-based coating that kind of started his whole journey into this. Right. And where are we now, and where are you guys with water-based, and how does that differ? Because obviously he was bringing up this point that it's water-based, but there were all these other things in there that weren't being
regulated.
Regulated. Exactly. They don't have to be on the label MSDS.
Yeah. That's a sum and substance to the regulation. You know, if there's a regulation, you're going to just comply.
Yeah.
All you have to do is just comply. You don't have to take it at a higher level. And most of the companies in the industry weren't looking at it through the filter of health. That wasn't the way they were analyzing their formulations. It was like the things I mentioned. It's got to work. It's got to be easy to use. It's got to be cheap. I mean, that was kind of the way the manufacturing world worked with these things. But now it's different. Now we have a different metric that we have to pay attention to. So again, it leads to complexities. I know, yeah, Andy's story about the parking structure and his people getting sick and had a whole sea change in his idea, his mentality about these things. We have a couple really interesting stories to really share with you just real quickly. One of the things that here in San Diego, two projects way back in the early '90s, we were spec'd in the Olympic Training Center down in Chula Vista. So all of the dorms down there are Safecoat paint, and then the San Diego City Environmental Services, their remodel. They bought a building up in Kearny Mesa that was an old building that needed to be retrofitted, and they retrofitted the whole building, and they used all our products in there as a part of that. But the story I really love is the Bmw story. So Bmw, their sedan, one of their big sedans, has a floor for the trunk, that covers the tire. So what they do is they actually have a company that they source out that cuts the plywood floors for the trunk. Well, they had commissioned a company to do all these plywood floors, $1 million worth of plywood. And the company and they paint them black. So the company then painted them black with a conventional product. Well, BMW vets all these things. BMW got the floors, and they did their testing, and they said, no, we can't put that in our car. The company that had done this was completely freaking out. Because they hadn't done all the panels yet. They had just supplied the one panel, but they were sitting on the cut stuff, and they couldn't recut, they couldn't change, which would have been the good idea, would have been to change the material. It's always better to source the safest things at the very beginning, if you can. And in that instance, it would have been sourcing formaldehyde-free plywood. Probably wasn't around, or they couldn't get it, or they didn't know about it. So now what are they going to do? They're frantic. They start calling around. We've got to do something different. We got to seal the plywood. We got to deal with the formaldehyde. They found us. We gave them our safe seal. They started buying it in 55-gallon drums. They sprayed it with safe seal, and then they painted it with our paint, our black paint. Resubmitted to BMW, 2 thumbs up. Passed the test. These guys, went, they exhaled, knowing they didn't have to eat $1 million worth of plywood, because that was what they were staring at. So I really like that story in terms of us being able to come in and help a situation. The city of Sapporo, Japan, their high school program decided that they were going to change, retrofit the high schools in the prefecture of Sapporo. And so they did a demonstration school using conventional products. They came back in, they let the students back in. Guess what? Students started getting sick. It was a big deal. It was a big deal. It was so big, it was on Japanese television. We had to just set up our dealer in Japan. And he came into the process and he said, hey, listen, I think I have a solution for this. So they went back and they redid this one school with Safecoat, brought the students back in. Everything was so much better. There was no reports of any illness at all. And so they wound up doing all of the 70 schools in the prefecture of Sapporo. So it was, for us at that time, it was like, that's a moonshot, right? That's like a home run, getting the message out and telling people there's a better way to do things. We don't have to poison ourselves anymore.
Yeah. Talking about a better way, in 2 different mindsets, the listener, being the customer, thinking about even just painting one small room. And then there's the contractor exploring other ideas and better ways of doing things for the customer. So when people find you, trying to get these steps, do you guys have something online where it's like follow these steps, or is it best to just call you and ask you about these steps? Like, where are you guys at as far as educating us?
That's a really great question. We if you're on our website, afmsafecoat.com, if you scroll down just a little bit, there's a house, illustration of a house, and it's got little glowing balls on it. And if you click on every one of those glowing balls, what you're going to get is our list of the products that you would be wanting to use for that specific project.
Nice.
List them all. So let's say you're painting new sheetrock. You're going to see our new wallboard prime coat, which is our primer for sheetrock. And then you're going to see the Safecoat paint that you would use over that, depending on which sheen. And then there's another link down there that says the quick spec. And that link is a document that actually tells you exactly, project by project, not product, but project, what our recommendations are in terms of how many coats and the coverage. Mm-hmm. And so it's a real quick way to kind of get your head wrapped around what I'm doing. So we've got interior walls, we've got floors, we've got exterior, we've got all the basics in terms of your project to get you started. And then, yes, if there's a question that comes up, it's best to just call. I do most of the, education and talking to the client about, which directions we're going to go. Our dealers are really pretty good at that too. We really count on our dealers to try to be as smart about educating their clients. That's another question that comes up too, and I get a lot of calls. Hey, do you know a contractor in Idaho? And of course, I can't say I do, because I'm counting on my dealers there to know the lay of the land with their contractors. And so I say, well, if you're in Idaho and you need a contractor, you should call in my dealer. I don't have a dealer in Idaho, but and then I will try to make recommendations to somebody I may know who could help them find somebody that they can use. But if a dealer has a database, and a lot of them do have contractor databases, so they can say, hey, Joe Blow here is a guy that can do the work for you. The challenge though is a lot of these guys who are listed contractors, my dealers, are so busy because they're the only guy. There's only like 2 guys in all of the town that does it. And so that guy gets so busy that you're waiting in line, and sometimes that just doesn't work. And then we're back in the loop, right? Well, I've got to use the local guys, and then I got to educate the local guys. And so it's just a process. It goes on. And I know it's not going to change right away. It's changing slowly, as I said earlier. It's getting better, and what you're doing to educate people about this is great. And Eric, you're a changed man now that you're you know what to do and what's going on, and you got Fernanda there to remind you, that stay the course, stay the course. And it's a good course to stay, right? Because we all want to feel better. I mean, look what's going on right now with COVID-19.
Yeah.
I mean, and just to comment on that, I think the nice thing is we're all slowing down a little bit.
Yeah.
We're all kind of more aware of each other. And I think that's really a good thing. We need more of that, right? We need to listen to each other and pay attention to each other and think about one another a little bit more.
Yeah.
And especially in these times where it's so volatile. And so I'm looking at this thing as a good thing, right? I'm trying to stay out of the fear mind and just say, you know what? There's a message here. Everybody, we're getting a really great message, right? You know why? Because we may be here again. This may come around again. And aren't we going to be smarter about it the next time? I mean, I'm praying and hoping that we will be. I know we will be. So that to me is what this is all about. And frankly, it's kind of nice. I'm walking around my neighborhood and I'm seeing people and they're kind of thinking about me, right? Hey, are you okay? Or do you have it?
Yeah.
stay that 6 feet away from me, but people are saying hello and maybe they wouldn't. And I think that's just because we're kind of thinking about each other more now, which is
missing. Yeah, we're starting to miss the connectivity because now, like we used to go to work and you see people all the time, even though you're not connected, probably like heart to heart to those people, but you're around people.
Right.
And for me, it doesn't change. It's not changing much because I work from home. Right. So I don't have a lot of connectivity with people outside of the house because I work from home.
Right.
But it also brings another point, as you're saying, like it gives us an opportunity to also look at our health and just think about what can I do to be healthier, even if you don't have any sensitivity, right? Or if you're not showing any symptoms, because it took me years to show the symptoms. I was having sensitivity, but I was just not showing the symptoms.
Right.
And, now that we're staying home for a long period, and that's why I was the one that was mostly affected by the sensitivity. While everybody was out, I was home all day long. We are trying to encourage people to look at their home. Your home, let's look at your home and see what can you make it better. Like Eric did a live, and Eric's talking about humidity in the house, air quality, water quality. What is the room that you start first? And for us, we think like, the bedroom. If you can't paint the whole house, start with the bedroom. If you think you want to do something, because as a woman, you have the baby, you want to nest. You want to create that beautiful nursery for the baby.
Indeed.
You know what? There's safer ways to do that. We can still do that. And I think it's all about priorities. As you're saying, it might be a little bit more upfront, but it's the health of your baby that you're not paying down the road when the baby starts developing sensitivities or not. Right?
There's absolutely no argument to that. And I try to tell people, what's most important here is your health. I mean, that's it. This is coming through loud and clear right now. And it should be something we are always mindful of. The other thing that reminds me of is people, when we're talking about chemical sensitivity, there's some people who say, well, I'm not chemically sensitive. And I said, well, let me change your perspective a little bit about that. We're all chemically sensitive. We're just not suffering from the symptoms of overexposure. But I can promise you that if you are exposed enough, depending on your immune system profile, we're all different that way. Thank God we have really pretty much strong immune systems and we can kind of fight off the intruders. But we know that we're sensitive, and at some point, if we don't pay attention, guess what? Boom, the little barrel tips over, and then we can't go anywhere, and we're suffering from all kinds of things. We could avoid that if we're just a little more aware about what we're exposing ourselves to. And that's across the spectrum of all kinds of things, what we eat and how we manage our exercise and our meditation and all the things we do mentally to balance things out. It's all part of that picture. Yeah. And so I say, would you rather spend a little bit more money now and do this right, as opposed to trying to have a physician or someone give you medical advice that maybe is going to cost you so much more in the long run than anything you would have spent if you would have thought a little bit more carefully about these decisions that you're making in the early stages and doing it right. So yeah, it's all you're saying is absolutely spot on.
Yeah, and the peace of mind, because once it's hard for you, like, I can't buy cleaning products that are toxic anymore. I just can't help myself. I just read labels. And even if I don't know what they are, I'm Googling, I'm going to EWG, I'm going to all different places to find information. And when in doubt, I don't get it. But there's so many people out there, and I was there too, where I was just stuck. Like, I don't know what to buy, I don't know what to do, so I'm just doing nothing. And what I decided to do one day is like, I know it's bad, so I'm going to buy a product that I know it's better than the one I was using before, until I can find the one that's the best and I want to stick with. But, when you're making decisions about a house, that it's a long term, it's not like a cleaning product that you just, I don't like it, throw it away and then buy another one. Right. This is how often do you paint your home?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So it is worth the investment up front.
Yeah.
Then in the long term, you have to deal with the symptoms, or, don't have that peace of mind, always questioning, oh my gosh, is this affecting me? Is this headache because of the paint? Because you start doubting yourself later on with the decisions you make if you're not making the right one.
Right. No, it's absolutely true. Yeah, you have that feeling, oh my God, what did I do to myself here?
Yeah. Talking about that, what have you seen, like this gentleman you mentioned that baked his house? Let's say they didn't do that, and it's just normal everyday paint you would buy from a hardware store, either a do-it-yourself kind of thing, or let's say you painted your whole house with a painting contractor. What are you seeing from people? What are their complaints of the symptoms from toxicity from paint? What would people be looking out for, like brain fog, for example, or what do you?
Yeah. It runs the gamut, but usually it's headaches. It can be brain fog. It can be cold, like flu symptoms even. Those are the common ones. I tell people a lot of times we're not in a situation where a coating fix is the idea. They can't do that. They can't afford it. If it's a rental, they can't do it because the landlord's not going to let them do it. So what do? I say the best thing you can do is just try to control your air quality as best you can. That means a lot of ventilation. It's hard in the wintertime in a lot of places in the country because we can't open up the windows. We can't do that. So then we have to count on our HVAC system to be able to manage our air quality. And so it can be a real challenge, but that's what I tell people. The first thing you can do, even while you're waiting to make those decisions, if you're waiting to do something as a remedial, clean your air up, freshen that air, open the window. We're so lucky here, us in San Diego, because we've got perfect weather all the time. We can basically leave our houses open, 7/24. And so that's not a challenge. But in other places, that's really a challenge. But I say, if you can't do anything in terms of buying paint or putting a sealer on or changing the material out, just ventilate, try to keep things drier. Humidity can sometimes not be a good thing. So try to keep things drier if you can.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jay, for all the information you have shared with us. I know there's so many people out there that have been questioning safer ways to paint their home, and sealers and also stains. And I know you guys carry a different type of product, so I would recommend everybody to look at the website. And if you have any questions, just call Jay and talk to him. First time I called him, I called the company. I was able to reach them out, and it was very simple to get an answer. So Jay has a great gift for all of the listeners. He has a Safe Choice all-purpose cleaner sample. And if you want to claim that, I'm going to put the link down below this video, which is going to be his email. You just have to email him, and he will connect with you and send you the sample.
That's excellent. Thank you. And thank you for having me on the show today. It's been a great conversation. I hope since we live in town together, I hope we could get together sometime.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
should.
Yeah. I'm going to come up and see the house and see what you've done up there, and you can show me the whole thing.
Yeah, we still need some help. We can never solve all of our problems. It's an ongoing educational piece for our own home. So yeah, painting is actually in the near future, and so we'll be contacting.
Well, I'm your guy. Your guy.
Yeah. We stopped, like, our house is halfway painted, because once we learned about the paint, we had all these gallons of paint. And we had no idea what to do with that, but we were like, we can't use it, but we're not ready to throw it away.
Yeah.
And then we had one person, Caroline, that was on the show, and she talked to us about how toxic the paint is, especially once you crack it open. Even if you close it, it's still off gas.
Yeah.
So we took them out of, our house, our garage.
Outside of the envelope of the house. Yeah, that's if you haven't heard this yet, and I'm sure you'll agree, if you're storing traditional paints, solvents, cleaners, those things in your house, if it's in the envelope of your house, meaning if your garage is attached even, which ours was, get them outside the envelope of your home for storage.
Yeah. No, absolutely right. Absolutely right. Good stuff.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much. And for you guys that are here, so Jay also, if you want to find him, Andy Pace was here on the show last week, and they have a podcast. It's called Non-Toxic Environment, and you can find them. And all this, everything you have been, seeing on this show, it's an ongoing conversation in their podcast.
Absolutely. So, right. Yeah, there's a whole lot of archival things in there. I think when Andy and I talk about a variety of different subjects. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because I think it's a good thing. And it's linked on our website too. You just scroll down and you'll see the link to the Non-Toxic Environment podcast.
I'm going to put a link down below to make it easier for you guys to find it.
Great talking to you too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.